Hey, viewer, if you're running a hospitality business, you already know the work doesn't stop. And most of the time, it's not even the guests that wear you out. It's everything happening behind the scenes. That's why I'm really glad to introduce you to Lodgify. Lodgify is an all-in-one platform that helps short-term rental hosts and hospitality operators stay organized without needing a dozen different tools. You can manage reservations, keep your calendar synced, communicate with guests, and even collect payments all in one place. And if part of your goal this year is to drive more direct bookings, Lodgify also makes it easy to build your own website so guests can book directly with you. Plus, and I love this one, they include free onboarding, so you never have to figure out everything on your own. If you'd like to spend less time managing the chaos and more time focused on hospitality, try Lodgify with a 20% discount on all their yearly and bi-yearly plans with our code THM20, and that's THM20. Now, let's get started with the podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Hospitality Mentor Podcast. And today, listeners, I'm very excited for this one. I have my friend, Adam Tuttle, co-founder of Yippy. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steve. I'm super excited. Thanks for having me on. This is really great.
So why don't we tell the listeners, give them like a 30-second download. What is Yippy before we get into your story?
Yeah, thanks for that opportunity. Yippy is the industry's first hospitality standards management system, which is essentially a system allowing hotels to have one central location for all of their standards, allows them to distribute those standards based off of roles, responsibilities, requirements, and then on top of that, deep analytics to know how are we doing, how are we performing, with the ability to provide inspections and audits internally and externally, making sure leaders have all the information they need to make critical decisions.
I love it, man. You got that elevator pitch down, Adam.
It took a while, right? As things learned and got developed, it took a really understand what is this really in a nutshell?
Well, I love it. Well, let's get started with our first question we ask everybody. So, Adam, what was your very first job in hospitality?
It's a trick question because I grew up, my dad was a marketing guy in a casino in Mesquite, Nevada when I was a kid. So I grew up heavy in the industry, doing tours and cleaning up the outside of the building. So my very first job was actually picking up trash on the outside of the building for $20 a month. So that was my first job, which was great. But really, when I look at my professional career, my first job that wasn't for my dad in the industry was actually working at the Eiffel Tower in Las Vegas, Nevada, and not the restaurant. We're talking elevator operator Adam Tuttle, pushing the button, taking people to the great heights of the Eiffel Tower, watching the Bellagio fountains. Nothing to do in college.
So college. So you knew you wanted to be in hospitality because you went to UNLV and you studied hospitality. How'd you know you wanted to do that? Just because of what your dad was up to?
It's interesting. When I was 10 years old, again, back to my days when I was picking up garbage, I actually went through what I call my career midlife crisis, where I was like, what do I want to do? What do I want to be when I grow up? And it was like really actually all consuming, funny enough. And when I was around 12 or 13, it kind of like hit a spike, and I thought, gosh, what really is this? And we went on a trip, and I was at a hotel, and it was the first time I recognized, oh my gosh, this is somebody's job. They can show up every day and do this? Are you kidding me? I want to do this. So I went home and I wrote UNLV and was like, I want to go to hotel school. Like, I want to do all this. And the dean was nice at the time and, wrote me an email back. I was, can't wait to have you. I was an in-state school, so they had to take me, but so since that age, I am always wanted to be in hospitality. I thought at first F&B was my route. I was a little too soft, I think, for F&B. So they spat me up, chewed me up and spat me out a little bit. And rooms was a much better fit for me. So that was my background in there.
I can see it. So you're at the Eiffel Tower, you're pushing the elevator buttons. Was it like, I've never worked in Vegas, but in my head, it's like, man, it's like the World Series of like hospitality. When you're in that giant hotel, what is it like?
It was really interesting because I got that job in February of 2009. And the job market in Vegas post 2008 was ridiculous. There were 1,600 applicants for this one job because it had benefits. And I remember getting the job, and there I was standing on the casino floor looking out as Vegas was just making like its initial try to recover from, in 2008. And it was wild to just watch the casino industry from a very far, right? But to still be a part of the communication, to still be, in the pulse, so to speak, of what was happening. And also at the same time, laterally be studying hospitality at the same time, of just seeing the industry in action. And luckily, I then immediately after that was offered a role in the Players Club, to handle VIPs and player registration and all of that. And I took the job. And then right before I started, I ended up actually moving and taking another job off of the Strip and opening a La Quinta, funny enough. And I got to watch that open from nothing, like putting beds through the windows, type experience. And that was just fantastic. But being in Vegas, in the epicenter of hospitality in the United States, is just so wonderful to see, because you see how eclectic our industry really is, what we bring. And it opened my eyes truly to realize how many industries are jammed into this thing we called hospitality, right? There's everything. There's food and beverage and hospitality and rooms, but engineering and marketing and all of that in our shell of an industry. And it was just one of the most invigorating experiences early on to really have the realization that we're in our own ecosystem in this industry, and it's just so wonderful.
It's true. I always tell people, like, imagine like every little thing that goes into a hotel room, all that is a different vendor sometimes, like, for
Yeah.
pillow, linens and terries and all the little amenities you see on the counter and the mini bar and the fridge that goes with it. So many cool things. That's just a room. And then it goes out to all the property, which is always fun to see. But you mentioned something here. You made a little switch from the big mega resort to a La Quinta. How does that happen when you have so many different places to go, maybe available, that you make that change to opening a La Quinta?
Yeah, it was great. That career move was really awesome. So I um was working there in the casinos, and was like, okay, I was in Caesars Entertainment. I was there during right as the purchase happened, from Harrah's to Caesars, and the name change and all of that. And I thought, gosh, I'm here, I've landed. And then I met one of the owner investors of that La Quinta, and he said, look, I would love to introduce you, because what this is going to give you an exposure to is seeing the operation much closer. In the big casino world, you're gonna be in it, but you're gonna just be head down doing check-ins and check-outs all day, if you go there, right? And the exposure that you'll get in the industry will be great, but the job exposure will take a lot longer. But if you can get in here, at this opening, you're going to see and be a part of the sales process, right? So I had to go on sales calls, and start establishing corporate accounts, and trying to woo local businesses to get their, travel business into us, and working with the airlines to get the airline negotiated rates. And it was actually really wonderful, because being able to be at a smaller property, much more, again, it was absolutely on the economy side of the market, but I did everything. It was a jack of all trades, right? And so I was much more connected with guests. I was much more connected with what does it take to make the industry move and function and create satisfied guests. And what was really fun about that property is I was the employee number 2, I think, there. And I just hired all my friends. It was like, hey guys, we're opening a hotel. We're all studying a hotel. Let's go do this. And they're like, let's do it. So we had a bunch of, college kids running this, and some other, people that had the flexibility to do it. But at one point in time, we went through a GM switch, and our new GM came in, and she said, have you guys been on TripAdvisor? Now, remember 2015, 2010, 11, TripAdvisor was at the peak of its dominance in the market,
Yes,
right?
I remember.
And she said, have you guys seen your TripAdvisor score? We said, no. She goes, well, you're number 4 on TripAdvisor in Las Vegas. We're like, get out of here. And we actually ended up climbing to number 2 on TripAdvisor, which we held for 2 years while I was there, because it was all about getting engaged to the guest experience. It was about being tangible. So that was, while it can look as, oh my gosh, look at all this opportunity that was out by leading the strip and being a part of, the mega casinos, what really ended up happening is that transition over to like La Quinta gave me insight and hands, in the pasta, so to speak, of really understanding what made this industry function on a day-to-day basis. It was awesome.
That's amazing. Yeah, because I've talked to a lot of people that have worked in these types of hotels, and you get to learn every department. It's hands-on. You have to know everything. Get in the
Yeah.
rooms, making sure breakfast is up. If there is something at front desk, you hop in. Like, you get to learn everything very quickly. But then you make a move, which is an interesting one, because a lot of times people get into hotels that are select service, and then they can't get into luxury hotels because the luxury hotels in their mind are like, well, he doesn't know luxury.
Yeah.
Maybe you fit here, but you end up at one of the best hotels as a front desk agent. So you make a little bit of like a half step back, I would say, to get in. Tell me where you ended up going. Tell the listeners.
Yeah. So, again, all through the school, all through UNLV, I'm working, I'm there at the front desk, and at the La Quinta, my general manager is like, look, I can't wait to see you grow. We want to develop you. We're going to make you a GM of another property, maybe as soon as you graduate, maybe even before that. So it's like some great promise, right? Within this management company, it was real great. And then, I had a really great, contact there at the university. Her name was Dr. Bobby Barnes, and she ran a mentorship program with UNLV. And so, of course, I signed up because this industry is obviously your skill and what is incredibly important, but equally important, and sometimes even more, is who you know. And I was like, there is no way I am going to miss up this opportunity to be paired with someone for 6 months to get to know them. And I got paired with the now late Mark Hellrung, who was the general manager of the Four Seasons there in Las Vegas. And he was the best mentor you could ever ask for. We would go to lunch, we'd go to dinner, and he'd take me in, and he'd said, have you done your internship yet? And I said, not yet. He said, we were doing it here. And he got me into my internship. I did it in HR. And then immediately after that, he was like, look, we'd love to have you here. Would you ever consider, leaving your job there at La Quinta and coming to Four Seasons? And I said, absolutely. So I ended up leaving. It was actually so hard. One of the hardest things I've ever done is had to go tell that boss, like, hey, I'm leaving for this other opportunity. And it was wonderful. It opened up an entire career for me. I did Vegas, DC. I opened the Four Seasons at Disney World with them. I ended up moving back to that Vegas hotel where I started as a front desk agent, became the director of the front office there. So it was a literal full circle movement around the entire country to get back to it. And it was eye-opening. I mean, I worked at a La Quinta on a Wednesday and started Four Seasons on a Thursday. And just to see that dichotomy between the segments of industry, seeing what overlapped, what was different and what really wasn't, right? What was all the same, just maybe with a different skin on, so to speak. And it was so incredible. But gosh, that learning curve was like a mountain. I'll tell you, it was okay. And I had to learn, and sorry for going on about this, but I had to learn for myself of like, okay, in my head, this was good enough, right? I was like, okay, I was nice, I was friendly, I was helpful. This was good enough. I did not grow up experiencing luxury hospitality. That was not what I did or how my family traveled. And so I didn't really have all the pinpoints, of what were the finer points that needed to be layered into these experiences. And it was that initial experience with Four Seasons as the front desk agent that taught me the subtle realities of luxury of, okay, great, you did this, but we need to go here. Like, this is how you really show engagement. This is how we show personalization. This is how, hey, we need to anticipate what the guest is going to ask for by just thinking through, okay, it's their first time to Vegas. They've never been here. What are the things that we can offer and give them that are going to give relevance or help? And it were those light bulbs where I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the insight, it's the connection, it's the, what really drives luxury isn't always in the product and the price, of the ADR, but in the reliability of the engagement and the quality of the service. And so it was just a masterclass in service that I was so fortunate to have.
No, I love it. I never got to work at Four Seasons. I interviewed there one time at the one here in Surfside.
Oh,
And
hey.
they told me, Steve, you're going to be bored here. And that's when I ended up back at the Lowe's Miami Beach Hotel at a big resort. But I always love people that worked at Four Seasons. You always see people stick for a long time and move around the country. Now, was that something you raised your hand for, or are they saying, hey, Adam, we have opportunities, go travel?
Yeah, I think that it all depends on the culture of the business. But for me in Four Seasons, there's kind of a funny little, saying within Four Seasons that you'll hear every once in a while, which is you go to grow. So if you want to really move up quickly, move around. You get to experience the way different hotels work. And what's unique about Four Seasons is, yes, it's a brand, but it's also primarily a management company, right? And so as you move around, you're exposed to different hotel operations that are still striving for this level of, super quality excellence. And while Four Seasons is big on standards, it's very much unscripted, right? It's more of what's the feeling, what she. And so by going to different properties, you just get to intake different ways of doing hospitality, right? And working and understanding how local markets are different and the impact that's going to have on. And what that really does is it helps create a very rich and healthy culture within the organization, because you get to see and work with other people from different backgrounds in different markets. You can understand different models for success to truly be able to deliver an exceptional experience. Now, what's nice about Four Seasons is if you wanted to stay there for the rest of your life, you're more than welcome to. Like, hey, stay. It does kind of, there is the culture of understanding once you get into more senior positions, you're going to claw on what they call the pipeline, right? Not letting people move through that position to develop, to become GMs as the brand is growing. So while I never felt the pressure of, hey, you need to move up and move out, there was always this kind of, are you going to stay here forever? And it was kind of like this, what's your plan? Like, how long? And if you were someone that said, I'm going to plan on staying here for the rest of my life, it's like, you're going to be a great manager, but maybe not director or hotel manager or GM. So
I guess you go to grow.
Go to grow.
And so for you, you go to DC, you end up in Orlando. And I'm curious about this because you're in Orlando for a couple of years and you get to work. I'm always been curious about this hotel. I haven't had a chance to stay, but I always see that it wins so many awards in Orlando. Yes. And you're mixing Walt Disney and Four Seasons together. What is it like working in that environment where it is such a high performing hotel and you have Disney associated with it as well?
This was the great experiment, right? So a little bit of history on this hotel. First of all, it's my favorite Four Seasons I've ever stayed at.
Everyone knows, yeah.
And so it is a charm and a unique, it's unique and it's unlike any other property in the world. And then I think that the reason is it really had to step in to define itself. So when Isidore Sharp, the founder of Four Seasons, had actually planned on going into Disney many years before that. And they had talks and it was scrapped because Disney said, great, you'll come in, we'll put the logo in and we'll run it. And it'll be Disney employees and it'll be everything. And they said, absolutely not. That's not how this will go. It will be a Four Seasons hotel. So what ended up happening, Four Seasons, that property was the first hotel of its kind, or first business to buy land in Disney, from Disney. And it is now, like where it is in Golden Oak, where that property sits, is owned by Four Seasons and its investors. And then that hotel is run independent of Disney, and it is an affiliate hotel. And it was really great opening the hotel because Disney was the one that then reapproached Four Seasons, was like, hey, we need luxury. We need this back into this market. And learning, okay, what's the balance here? How do we create enough magic? How do we create enough? Okay, I want this to feel magical. I want this to feel Orlando. I want it to feel Disney, but also giving them an escape from it. One of the best things we ever heard was, oh my gosh, I love coming back to this hotel because it's an escape from Disney. Like I get a kind of like escape from my escape, right? And it was like, okay, we're home. Like there's no gift shop. There's nothing that we're, forced to walk through. And that partnership in the very beginning was one of figuring it out. And I mean that in the best way. And we'd have the Disney desk across from us. It was like, okay, what can we do? What can we say? What can't we do and say? And it was learning to balance two experiences in one, right? And what was really great about that hotel is when it opened, the average length of stay, was 2 or 3 nights. Now the average length of stay is 4 to 5 nights because guests are wanting just to stay at that hotel. They're saying, great, we're going to go do our 3 days at Disney, but we want to also make sure that we have 1 or 2 days just staying at the property. And I think that's a huge, tremendous, accolade for the hotel itself of saying they're really creating something that's amazing.
No, so everyone that goes there tells me it becomes their favorite hotel, like in their top 5. It's so amazing. So you're there, you're doing a great job. Again, you get this opportunity to go back to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And you come back and you're director of front office, but you decide to make a change in your career. How does things start to evolve? You start getting an entrepreneurial itch because you could, like you said, you're at Four Seasons, like you show consistent growth. You're going to some of the best hotels. You could have been doing whatever you wanted. Sure. So what happened?
Yeah. So it was a little bit of a fun career journey. I really enjoyed this path of growth, and my wife and kids, we really wanted to move international, and we wanted to have that experience of being able to move. And so we were tapped to go and open the Four Seasons in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I speak fluent Portuguese. And so it was like, okay, let's go to Brazil. And this property, we're looking at housekeeping positions. It was going to be great. And then we learned the benefit package. Typically there's a great expat benefit package. That package just wasn't going to be there for this property. That there was no relocation. It was a plane flight, and you would be paid, differently than typical. So we said, you know what, never mind. We're not going to do that. We declined the offer, and then came this moment of like, again, I'll call it my absolute midlife career crisis of saying, hang on, I'm trying to become a general manager. What do they even do? What is this job that I want that I've never done? I've never even seen done. Why am I trying to get there? I'm trying to run a race where I don't even know where the finish line really is. And do I want that? And then the entrepreneurial itch hit of like, I know that I just turned 30, and I said, if I don't try something now, I'll lose this opportunity, and the industry will always be here. And so if I can leave, I've got a fantastic resume, got some fantastic partnerships, great, relationships with everybody. I'm going to leave and start a consulting business. I had no clients. I had no prospect. I had no one that wanted to do business with me, but I just had this belief that, gosh, I want to go out there and help train the world. And so I did. I left and I started a consulting business and grew that to a business that, produced with task force employees and upsell training and service training, and did $1 million of business over a year. And it was just incredible. But knowing that this was the shot that I needed to take, and also knowing that I'm coming from an industry that has a net, so to speak, right? That it's so easy to get back into things and use the relationships that I had in order to create a really great experience. So
because there's a lot of people listening to this right now. They're like, Adam, I've always wanted to do consulting, and consulting is hard. Like, like you're going up against you and against me and a bunch of other consultants out there. And there's all different kinds of people who are, some people think as consultants is just, oh, you're going to cover the floor. Others are very big projects like developing huge hotel programs and developing the floor plans and all the vibes that go into big resorts. How did you start finding things for work, right? Because a lot of people are like, yeah, I want to, but how do I market myself? How do I do sales? How do I do this? How do I get my first client?
Oh man, getting that first client was it was rough, right? It was me driving around, knocking doors, posting on LinkedIn. Okay, this is what I'm doing now. And ultimately it came down to relationships. And it's very interesting to learn when you when you leave the industry as an operator to become a consultant. It's kind of like trying to leave Ireland with the Irish, right? They just like want to pull you back in, like, no, don't leave. Like you're gonna fail. Don't do it. Yeah, what are you doing? And it's also very interesting to see who in your network shows up, who starts to actually support you. And you'll say, hey, I'm doing this, and everyone wishes you the well. And oh my gosh, I hope you're gonna be great. And then you turn around and you're like, hey, who do you know? Can you make a record? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. And then you quickly find who the people are that surround you that truly are there to support you. And that's really what it came down to. I couldn't be shy, and I reached out to everyone in my network. And funny enough, my first couple clients came from people that, I mean, I knew them, they knew me, we had worked together, we had talked together, they had also left. But it wasn't like, someone I was going to get drinks with or, hang out with on a regular basis, but they just, I really loved working with you, and I loved the way that you showed up to work every day. And if you could bring that to our property, we need your insight. And so it was really great. And I got to go there and I got to do my first couple things. My old boss at the La Quinta, they hired me back to come and do training for them. And they were like, we'd love to hear, about your journey and be a part of that. And then I early started doing some task force opportunities to just fill in the gaps of, okay, I've got a project here. I'm working on another project here. Okay, what do I do for this? Okay, there's task force opportunities. So I went in and, covered the floor for a couple hotels here and there. And then that really led to this word of mouth. And I was able to do consulting work with, the big ones, the big names. Back with Four Seasons, did consulting work with them, and Amon and Ritz Carlton's, and, all of these other people. Was able to really get in. And then I was able to find my niche. Like, where did I fit? Where did my style and background really lend itself? And then once I kind of found that stride, it was like, oh, great. And unfortunately for me, I would never really invested like I should have in the marketing side of that consulting, because most of my business, I was so busy in early days just from the word of mouth that I never really looked and expanded. And then finally I did expand, brought in some extra people to help and grow the brand. And that's challenging as well, right? And going from, I want you and your skill set and your knowledge, to I want their knowledge and skill set that you oversee. And those are two very different tasks that took to grow. But for anyone listening that has that idea of saying, I want to do it, I always point everyone back to the wisest person we've ever known is Yoda. And do or do not, there's no try, just do it. And sometimes you got to take that leap of faith. And sometimes it's the right time and sometimes it's the wrong time. And I would say that it's 80% luck and 20% dedication. And maybe a sliver of your skills hopefully are in there that are valuable. But
I love it. And you were doing that. You were doing a great job. And then let's get into Yippy now. So you start to, I want to hear how this comes about. I don't think I've ever heard this part from you. So you're doing consulting, you're doing great, you're doing training, you're doing task force, you got a nice client roster. And now we get into Yippy, which you explained at the top of the show what it is. But how did you now decide to create it? Where does that come from?
so it came from, again, I think the best way that technology gets created, which is looking for a solution to a problem. I am on 100%. I'm on the wrong side of the desk. Like, my place often is behind the other desk, right? Like with the guests and figuring that out on the hotel side. And as a consultant, I was working with so many properties, and I was, between this hotel, that hotel, and everything. And I kept looking and I said, gosh, do we go and we make this investment to training? And then we leave and we come back in 3-4 months. And what did we do? What was the growth? What was the success? And as a consultant, you're always trying to prove the value of what you do, right?
Yeah.
Of like, okay, what's the tangible here? Like, did I increase your revenue? Did we, increase guest satisfaction? What is that? And in my role, I specifically really focused on 3 things, which was standards creation and development, service training, like the actual doing of it, and then upselling. So upselling was great. It was like, hey, you're going to pay for this by tomorrow, like the same day, upsell training covered. The other 2 were difficult to quantify, like the effects. And so I was looking for something, and I genuinely were looking, okay, where is a tool that I can put all of the standards in one place? Because I was working with hotels that were Forbes, AAA, American Express. They were branded. They have general managers wanting certain things done. And I'm like, hey, I got to keep track of all your standards. There's too many here.
Yeah.
And every hotel was dealing with the same problem, every single one. And it wasn't, the real problem wasn't even that they couldn't understand or, simplify where their standards were located. It was, there really was an assistant in place, both from a technology standpoint and a cultural standpoint, that allowed hotels to really understand what the definitions of excellence were and how they needed to distribute those standards and who needed to focus in on it and what they needed to do. And then have a daily system of digesting the operation in micro bites, right? A simple observations and feedback and data points that then yielded some type of result that said, okay, this is where you need to go. So I looked all over and I was getting all the apps. And I was saying, okay, what about this? What about that? And my best friend and co-founder, I was talking to him one day. He's a software engineer. I was like, man, I'm looking for this thing. And his straight words to me were, well, of course it exists. Like, that sounds like a really easy thing. And I was like, yeah, me too, but I can't find it. And he then said, well, let me help you look. He goes, you probably just don't know how to look because you're a hotel guy. You don't know how to look for software. Couldn't find it. And he came out and said, hey, I don't think this thing exists on the market. And so he said, what if I made you something that could do this? Would that be helpful? And I said, yeah, it'd be super helpful. Thanks. And so we cobbled together, using SurveyMonkey and some Power BI tools and exporting it to Excel and all this stuff. And my clients went bananas. Like, they were so excited. Oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me. Look at all this data. Look at all this stuff. And I went back to him and said, hey, they're really excited about it. And the thing that did it for me was when a client came to me and said, hey, we love this tool. I want to refer you to a friend and colleague. They have a full training department. They have everything. They don't need consulting. They need this tool. Can they use it? I was like, how does that work? Like, if it's not connected to my consulting, how is that going to work? And so we said, let's try it. And we did. And so we saw that it was worthwhile. And then we said, okay, let's develop this thing as its standalone, system. And just did it as a platform. So we built it and just took on a very few clients, 1 or 2 or 3. And we just said, okay, let's service these people for a year. What does it mean to service them? What type of updates do you do? What works? What doesn't work? And we came back and they just gave us a list of all the great things they wanted to see developed and how they did it. Mm-hmm. And we still have all those original clients. They're still with us because, and have taken us through every level of this because it works, right? And they love it. So, that was the journey, which is kind of looking for a solution to a problem that I knew very deeply existed and was very aware of the complexities of it. And to the point where it was like, okay, if I can't find the solution, it's my responsibility to build it. And so I'm just tickled that I get to stay in this industry and also bring something to it that lets me feel like I'm bettering this industry as a whole, which is just the best part about it.
Yeah. So creating a software as a service is a very different than being in a hotel operation consulting. I think a lot of people out there are like, oh, I have this idea to build something. I want to do it and just never actually get going or don't know how to code or don't know how to do this. Now with AI, you can do like the vibe coding a little bit, right? Test some things. But how did you figure out like, all right, we're going to do this? Did you have to go find developers? Was it your friend who knew how to do all of this? Like, how did you take that first step to start building it for those clients?
Luckily, my friend, Phil is his name, Phil Erickson. We kind of have a funny little thing like, oh, look, man, you cook, I serve, right? So he did all of our development. He coded every single line of those initial apps and still oversees the majority of our coding. And it was wild to connect him and I, because we've been friends since we were 19. And all of a sudden we realized we spoke two very different languages, right? And I would say, oh, I want a button. And he'd go, cool, that button you just asked for is 6 months of coding. I'm like, well, what are you talking about? I just want the button. It doesn't matter. Yeah. And he's like, cool. So what's the system that's going to let you do this and this and this and this? And it was just like,
Make it.
oh my God, I don't know. And I asked him the question. I was like, well, what if we just, go hire someone externally and we invested in some offshore stuff. And he said, great, you're going to get exactly what you pay for and they're going to give you what you want, but it's going to be, the back is just going to be a mess and you're not going to be able to actually scale it. And I said, okay, well, that's fine. What do we do then? And so it really came down to a very core principle that we have at Yippy, which is called domain-driven design, which is, what do we develop and what do we build? And it can only be guided, directed by customers and clients, people that are willing to pay for it and say, look, this is my real problem that I'm really facing. This is how the solution is going to fit in with money. So we meet with our clients regularly, and we're talking quarterly meetings where we bring in individuals and we say, tell us what's missing. What would you like to do with this? And all of our features last year that we released, over 70 new features, were all client informed. They were all client based, because that's where we learn what needs to go. And now our coding and our development team's much larger, but it really was. I mean, and you remember early on, hopefully, Steve, you were early. We're used to games, right? Well, how does this need to work? I would love to see this, and it's like, okay, hold on, how do we do that? How do we make that happen? And then go and figure it out and do it. But I definitely think anyone that's looking from, I should say, our industry needs more hoteliers to step into it, because what we've been given in our industry is what the tech industry thinks we need. And they're just so disconnected with how our industry functions, that they build tools that then we spend as hoteliers adopting and adapting our work style and the way our business functions to try to meet the needs of this tool to help us give us the thing that we need. No, we need hoteliers in the tech space, helping us build technology that works for hoteliers like hoteliers. And that's really what we really need.
I love that. That's a great Bennett right there. We'll have to clip this one, everybody, and put that one out there. But it's true. I won't say the other company's name because this is your podcast, but we were together at High Tech when I was helping one of my clients, and that's what it was. They didn't work in the industry and they wanted someone who's been an executive, like, tell us what to do. How do we do this? How do we make this? And that's evolved for me into this whole kind of new world, which I enjoy being and getting to see from behind the scenes. But for you, it's funny. You're now been going at this for a couple of years, 4 years, right?
Yeah.
With Yippy. And some big news came out recently. Can you share it here? What, you raised some money? What's happening in your world?
Yeah, we've got some really great big news. Thanks. We just finished what's called a pre-seed round. So we got $1 million of investment to help grow Yippy. Our fantastic partner at Great North Ventures, they're based out of Minnesota, really saw the value in what we're bringing and said, look, this industry not only needs this, but it needs strong backing and allows us to develop it. So we're super grateful for them and for the support we got. We also recently became a partner with the leading hotels of the world. And with them, we're now selling throughout the entire world, all over, to some of the greatest hotels that exist. We also just got our Marriott approved vendor status. We've been seeing tremendous success in the luxury segment. So we're seeing the Ritz-Carltons, JWs, W's, all of these brands really, really coming into Yippy because they've tried every other platform and system out there. And I was actually just in Naples this weekend, and they said, we've tried literally everything, And this is what we've been waiting for.
Oof,
And
that's-
so it's really great to build these solutions that the industry is recognizing is the thing that they've been trying to build. But my favorite thing there in Miami, Patrick at the Carillon said, I've been trying to build this for 15 years.
yeah.
And finally it comes out and you guys have it. And it was, oh, yes.
I
So
feel like I made that introduction. Did I make that introduction?
you did make that introduction.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I remember Patrick. It was at one of the shows. I was like, yeah, you got to see this.
You got to see this. You got to go to the networking events because real stuff happens there, real business, human beings connect and do business, not by pushing, an agenda, but by truly just giving us an opportunity to mingle and say, hey, how can I help and be authentic with it.
That's true. You got to network to get work, man. And that's how it works.
Wonderful.
And what's funny is I was just going through as live on this show as we're recording. I just like, when did I first talk to you? So I was scrolling back some messages. And so you sent me a message on LinkedIn 4 years ago to the date almost, February 25th, 2022, that said, hey, Steve, great job on the podcast. Can't wait to see the next episodes. Should you ever need someone with experience to come on, please let me know. And now, I mean, I was sorry it took so long to get you on here, man, but I just smiling at that because you were networking, you're making things happen. It just shows like how much of a belief you had 4 years ago. And I started this podcast 3 days before that message you sent, right? So it's just funny to see how long we've been connected and growing and being at shows. And I really wanted to say, because I'm sure, you don't get a lot of it, but proud of you, because a lot of people could have given up. They may have not stuck with it and gone back to doing, hey, I'm going to stick with consulting. This thing is too hard, but you've really shown people what it takes to grow and make things happen. But I do have one last question for you. Please. Actually, I have 2 more questions for you.
All right.
I'm not asking for your 5-year plan, but what are you most excited about this year coming up?
AI. Oh, I am so excited for it. I think that our industry, when we look at the future of hospitality, we cannot ignore the amazing impact I think AI is going to have. And I think it's going to be an interesting journey. But what Yippy solves for at its core is we are creating the system, the standard of standards. How do we help hotels truly and management companies and brands put everything that they need to have in one central database? The value that database brings to an AI system is unfathomable. Truthfully, like as we've starting to digest how this system can work with the power of AI, it's incredible. I mean, we're talking generated training plans. We're talking modulated audit structures of what you need to be looking at, cadences that need to be inspected. We're talking virtual audits, right? Where you can just go in and take pictures and link in with videos and just have the system tell you what your performance is. But beyond that, I'm really interested in the agentic AI component that's going to come into us now. And I think that there's 2 main things that we're going to need for agentic AI for customers, buyers to really buy into it. One, we need access to the CRM, right? Like, what are the rooms? What are the prices? What do you offer? Great. The second part is the standards. And I think that that's what people want. They're going to want to know, okay, do you have a kids club? Great. How many people do you have at your kids club? Do you have spa services? Yes. What level of, services do you offer?
Right.
And I think customers are going to want to start asking more questions that actually are directly tied to a business's standards that will have the wealth of knowledge that these systems will need to pull in from. And I'm excited because I think Yippy's positioned to be that repository of information. So I think it's just going to be fantastic. The development work there is really exciting. And it doesn't force us to leave behind what we already do and what we do well. It's just an augmentation of it.
Yeah, and you just keep growing and evolving. And I love it that you're working with, when you mentioned leading hotels of the world, I think it's good. They have their own training tools and things like that. I've had to use it and they were just not very good. And so they stepped in and start working with you, which is great. So last question for you here, because you share a lot of information here with us, Adam, but if you could go back and whisper into young Adam's ear over at the Eiffel Tower elevator, pushing buttons, what advice are you whispering in young Adam's ear?
That Every relationship is a bridge that everyone that you interact with, just remember to treat them the way you want to be treated. And, I learned early on the importance of the golden rule. Four Seasons is really big on the golden rule. But we also learned the importance of the next level of that. And I think it's corny as coined as the platinum rule, but treat others the way they want to be treated and learn the value of relationships and develop those. And I think I've done a good job of that through my life and industry. But I wish my younger self could have just understood this is the smallest industry in the world. I think that it is wonderful. I was just like I said, I was just in Naples this weekend with a hotel and talking with someone I've never talked to in my life, and 1 degree of separation. Oh man, we're great. And now we're stronger because of that. And I think that, for anyone that's in the hospitality industry, whether you're just getting started or you've been in it forever, it's just how incredibly important this network is and how fortunate we are to have the opportunity to be connected into just such a welcoming, true natured industry. The hospitality industry is an industry that truly comes from the heart, and it comes to us wanting to create relationships, wanting to create experiences. And then we get to do things like this, right? And then are authentic and genuine. So I wish I would have understood that better. Like, don't be so eager, just build the relationships.
I love that. I think that's great advice for anybody listening. And it's true. If you haven't met Adam, he's one of the most genuine, nice people in the entire industry. So try to make sure to reach out to Adam on LinkedIn so he can connect with him and see all the things he's doing. If you haven't yet, check out Yippy.io, which is spelled with 1 P, Yippy. So Yippy.io. Check out what they're doing there. And listeners, we share a lot of information here, a lot of great stories. And look, Adam's one of the best guys out there. So why don't you pause this, share this with somebody out there, because they're going to enjoy this story just as much as you did. Adam, thank you for joining us today. And I hope to see you in the real world, actually, hopefully soon.
Hopefully soon. Thank you, Steve. This is just the best.
You got it.